You really make money off of evictions? Good afternoon. I have a interesting story out of Oklahoma, and I just wanted to go over it with you. Um, it's about evictions, and we'll just start and we'll just go from there. So it says top eviction filers in Tulsa County, owned by out-of-state landlords, and it'd be good if you could see it too. So there you go. Um, and so the story starts off. It says more than 38,000 evictions filed in the state between March 2020 and July of 2021. Of those, a little less than half ended with a tenant being put out of their home. And then, if the tenant isn't actually evicted, it says, why go to court? Legal experts call it, among other things, a business model for making money. Really? Um, so, a fellow with Legal Aid of Oklahoma said, prior to the pandemic, 1,200 evictions were filed every month in Tulsa County. The majority of those coming from the complexes 2 News Oklahoma investigators found to appear again and again on Oklahoma's eviction court dockets. The vast majority of the evictions we see are not those mom and pop landlords based in Tulsa getting their retirement income. It's these large corporations that are filing by far the majority of these filings. And so, they're saying that people from out of town, out of state owners are clogging up the system on evictions. That's the assertion. So it says court data shows Cobblestone Apartments filed 629 evictions, ranking it not only Tulsa County's highest eviction filer from 2019 to 2020, but also in the state. And it says TMC Property Management released a statement that says it does not profit off of evictions. The $150 eviction filing fee that is passed through to the resident is a direct cost to the company for the attorney to file the eviction. So TMC said updated data shows that as of January 2021, Cobblestone Apartments filed 41 evictions for non-payment of rent. Shortly after, in February of 2021, a new community manager was hired, and the director of operations was tasked with improving operations. Well, that's good. It's good to hire somebody that's the director of operations and they actually do operations. The eviction number was reduced to 13 tenants facing an eviction filing in June of 2021. 12 of the 13 residents were able to stay in their apartments. It says TMC Management's other properties in Tulsa, Huntington Hollow and Lincoln Glens apartments, take the number 4 and 6 spots for high volume filers during this time. Huntington Hollow filed 327 and Lincoln Glens 303. And then it says, unfortunately, we have some companies whose entire business model is filing dozens and dozens of evictions each month. I don't really get that, but it says, Gensler said, typically the landlord will dismiss the act of eviction, but tenants will still be forced to pay not only what's due in rent, which is normal, but extra costs such as late rent and legal fees. So is he talking about the $150 above, or what are we doing here? So then you get a quote. It says that means they are basically stuck and they can't go anywhere else. So that's hurting local landlords as well, who don't have this tenant base, and local landlords, understandably, they're reluctant to rent to someone who has an eviction filing on their record. Vista's Shadow Mountain Apartments in Tulsa comes in at the number 2 spot for top eviction filers in Tulsa County between 2019 and 2020, with 454 evictions filed. Tulsa County Assessor property records show it's managed by a company in New Jersey called City R. The complex made headlines recently for not owing the city more than $100,000 in utilities, putting the tenants at risk of water shutoff, but also for what some city leaders call deplorable living conditions. The fire marshal did deem the apartments a hazard, and all tenants were forced to move out. So it says like it's on the problem solvers. So I don't exactly know who decided this was a problem. Okay, but I have some thoughts and I have some questions, and I kind of just wanted to go over them with you. So the first thing is, does it matter who has the right to file an eviction? Are companies not allowed, or only mom and pops? And as we've seen with the single family housing, institutional control of the available single family housing in America is a terrible idea. So perhaps you can see where I'm torn. On one hand, the landlord really only has one tool at the end of the day, and that is the eviction process. But who owns the apartment really doesn't matter. So it's not unusual for institutional investors to own real estate. That's not an issue. It's also not unusual for them to own real estate in different states. They're looking for a yield. They're looking for a return on their investment, wherever that might take them in the United States. So it's not unusual to see somebody, the one company is out of California, the other one's out of New Jersey, that are referenced in this article. That's not really strange at all. The other thing is we don't know the size of these units. I mean, is this a 1,000 unit complex? Is this how many units are actually in one of these complexes? So that's another thing that we don't know. But I don't understand. Are we saying that we can't file evictions? Or these companies shouldn't be allowed to file evictions? And so I just wanted to kind of keep that right there, because we'll go through some extra stuff and see if it kind of fits in. So it says 38,000 evictions for the year, half of which were followed through. So roughly 19,000 evictions for an entire state for the year. The scale matters. How many available units are currently leased in the state? So are there 1 million units in the state available for lease every year? We just don't know. And so we don't really have a good way to put these numbers in context. We also, it's a little strange, you had 38,000 evictions filed, only 19,000 went through. So you've got this other 19,000 of people that have been put in the eviction process, but it didn't end up resulting in an eviction. And then this is where, in the article, I'm trying to figure it out. It says legal experts call it, among other things, a business model for making money. And then later in the article, we get, unfortunately, we have some companies whose entire business model is filing dozens and dozens of evictions each month. Now, within the article, it says that there's a $150 filing fee charged to the tenant on an eviction. And then it says there's a late fee or late rent and legal fees. But the statement that their entire business model is focused on evictions has got to be false. The company business model is making a profit through the ownership of an asset that generates income. Part of that asset ownership involves being able to continually lease the asset to others. And if this were the business model, okay, a business model focused on evictions, why did the number 2 eviction filer have to prohibit tenants from continuing to live at the apartment complex after the fire marshal shut it down? It's not a great business model. So the last thing you would want to do is, if you're renting an apartment complex, you're owning one and you're renting it out, the last thing you want to do is to keep making payments on a property that isn't bringing in any income. So there's no way that the great business model is to file evictions. It's just not. It's just false. On the other hand, I have a sneaky suspicion that you probably don't want to be renting an apartment in the complex that has the highest eviction rate in the state, with 629 evictions filed in a year. That's an average of 52 a month. So I have some experience with rents and property management. So when I used to be a property manager, rent was due on the 1st, and you could pay up until the 10th. And if there was no rent check, it went straight to an eviction filing. Why is that? Well, we knew it would be 60 days before the eviction could go through, and you already missed a month's rent. So you're at 90 days guaranteed no income on the property. And we seldom had evictions. It's not because we ran to file an eviction. And by the way, it probably cost us about $150, and we paid it. But you have to understand, like speeding tickets, this type of law, evictions. I mean, certain attorneys in the county just handle them, and they give you a great rate because they know you're going to get they're going to get a ton of business from you. So that isn't really that bad for an attorney for $150. I don't think, for an eviction work. So something in this article is correct, though. Local landlords will be reluctant to rent to someone with an eviction on their records. If the eviction was warranted, and that is that the tenant did not pay rent all the way up to the eviction, like the 19,000 tenants in Oklahoma in 2020 and 2021, those are legitimate. But these other 19,000 cases where evidently some sort of plan was worked out and the people stayed in their units, even though an eviction notice was filed, those people are being punished in the sense that they're kind of stuck. If they try to move, there's still the eviction on their record, and that is unfortunate. Perhaps there's something that could be looked into. You don't want people where they're stuck in a place where they can't. You want to believe that we're in America and you can have upward mobility. Okay, getting hard to believe that, but that's what you want to believe. So these types of things where you've filed it for an eviction and then it didn't end up going all the way, perhaps that should be something that's looked into reasonably. I think there's a couple states now. I think Portland says you can't run somebody's credit when you're, or you can't look for criminals. Can't check someone's criminal record before you lease to them. That's a little bit odd. That's a little bit past where I would want to be on my scale. But I certainly don't want to punish people because of something that's automatic. So, like I was telling you, when we used to lease properties, I used to manage properties. It was automatic after 10 days. We just automatically filed it because, you can listen. People say, well, I'll pay my rent next month. I'm really sorry. I'll pay it. And maybe they don't have the money. In fact, I would say, gosh, 95% of the time, the people that didn't pay rent just didn't have the money to pay it. It wasn't that they were trying to spite the landlord or anything like that. So in that case, you kind of almost look for a voluntary move out rather than an eviction. But then again, we were trying to be fair with people, and we weren't trying to profit off of any sort of misfortune. So that's an interesting thing. So a couple of things in the article. So do you care? Put it in the comments below. Do you care if a property is owned by someone out of state, like a multifamily building? Does it matter if they take care of the building or if they just let it get run down? Does that matter? Is there some reason why we should allow someone to file an eviction that's an individual, an LLC, but not a major corporation or investor? What do you think? Those are some of the questions I had. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one.